Are you ready to break free from the doubts and limits holding you back? Welcome to Embrace Your Value, where therapy meets coaching to help you unlock your true worth and take control of your life.
Hi, I'm Kristen, a trauma therapist dedicated to helping you heal, break old patterns, and reclaim your power.
And I'm Jen, your support coach, here to show you how to set fierce boundaries, embrace self-compassion, and step boldly into the life you deserve.
So whether you're stuck in self-doubt or feeling lost, know this: your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to own it.
Every week, we tackle real issues that challenge, inspire, and empower you to live with purpose and confidence.
So grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's get started.
Because you're not here to play small. It's time to embrace your value. Hey, welcome back to Embrace Your Value. Today we have another fun little episode for you guys. I get to play host and interviewer because we're going to dive into something I know that many of you have heard of, or maybe you even haven't, but you maybe don't fully understand it. And we've talked a little bit about it, but I'm glad that we're diving deeper into this because I don't always understand it. And that is EMDR therapy. And I honestly cannot think of anyone better to walk us through this than my podcast partner and favorite therapist and just all around soul soother, Kristen Burrus. Kristen, I am so excited for this one.
Thanks, Jen. I am also very excited because I'm ready to demystify EMDR. People come in, they often have a lot of questions. And so I think this will be a good, easy way for people to understand how it's going. So it's one of my favorite tools for healing. And I know that people are curious and maybe intimidated. So let's just dive in.
So let's start from the top. What is EMDR? Because it sounds super technical, but the results I've heard about it sound amazing.
Yes, I agree. It is a strange name. So EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. It's a fairly structured therapy approach that helps people process and release traumatic memories or emotionally charged experiences that are stuck in the brain. Originally, it was developed for PTSD, but now, and this, I also use it for these things, for like anxiety, grief, low self-worth, perfectionism, and so much more. We know that most of these things come from trauma anyway, so it is the ideal therapy for almost anything that somebody's going through. So you can think of it as helping your brain refile the trauma folders so they don't keep popping open and triggering you.
Oh, that's really fascinating. And I love that. Let's get practical for a second. What does an EMDR session look like? What's really happening during that?
Yeah, that's a great question and probably one of the most often asked that I get. So when I'm doing EMDR with a client, we use something called bilateral stimulation, which simply means bilateral, meaning like one side of your body and the other. And the stimulation can be a couple of things. So it's either the eye movement, which is the EM part of EMDR. You can use a tapper. So either the practitioner can actually like tap on you, or I have these little hand buzzies that just vibrate. Or I also have the headphones and that sound in alternating ears. So this bilateral stimulation is mimicking what happens in REM sleep when your brain processes memories. So REM sleep is something most people are familiar with. And if you think about it, REM sleep, most people's eyes do go back and forth during REM sleep. And so this is how this sort of mimics that, if that makes sense. So while you're doing that, I guide you to recall a specific experience or belief, and we work to release the emotional charge about it. So there is a little bit of a progression that we do. We don't jump straight into like, oh my gosh, your worst traumatic memories or whatever. So there's a progression and it is a little bit structured, as I said earlier. So over time, as we're working through these things, your brain basically rewires how it holds that memory. It's like, this is shifting from, this is happening to me now, which is that trigger. And that did happen, but it doesn't bother me anymore.
I love that. That sounds incredible. So who is EMDR best for? How would somebody know this might be a good fit for them?
Yeah, I can use EMDR for almost anything. And I can maybe give some examples later. But I would say if you've ever said, I know this is in the past, but I still feel those same feelings that come up when something similar to that happens, which is really the definition of PTSD, one of, right? I still feel like it's fresh, then EMDR might be for someone like that. In fact, it really is. It's especially helpful for people who've done talk therapy and understand their story. Again, that cognitive part, but still feel stuck in the emotions of it. So in my experience, it's life-changing for people who've experienced big T trauma, like an abuse, or little t trauma, like invalidation, bullying, emotional neglect. Like sometimes it's just a bunch of little things that happen, and we call those little T's. High achievers carrying invisible burdens, like we've talked about before, EMDR can help unpack those quiet, deep-rooted beliefs like I'm not enough, or I have to do everything perfectly to be loved.
Wow. I love that you brought up high achievers because those are my people too. And now I know some listeners might be thinking, this sounds really intense. Can you clear up any myths or fears that people might have around it?
Absolutely. First, you're always in control. I really don't do a whole lot while you're actually processing other than turning on the equipment. Or, if somebody's doing this, they're moving their fingers. So it's not hypnosis. Like I'm not trying to get you to remember something that you couldn't remember. I'm not doing anything to you. Again, I'm just turning on the equipment. I use the buzzers. You're the one doing the healing. I'm just a guide in these moments. And sometimes an interpreter, right? If I know a significant amount about the person, sometimes I can look back at my notes and say, oh, this feels like that thing that you told me about a while ago. Is that possible? So we go at your pace. A lot of times people want to even speed it up, but I'm like, hold on, there's a process. We have to do the process. The other thing is you don't have to share every detail of your trauma in order to get results. It's not a magic fix, but it's powerful. So some things process in just a few sessions, others take quite a lot of time. But the clarity and lightness people feel after, it's like watching somebody breathe deeply for the first time in years.
That is just so amazing. I love that. And I love that you say that they don't necessarily have to divulge every bit of their trauma to make progress, because sometimes that's almost harder. Like it's almost harder to go back through that and to really be in that moment. So I think that's really great. I love that. I know you can't share names, but can you give us an example of a transformation that you've seen through EMDR?
I would say I have a lot that have a lot of similarities. So that way I don't have to be specific. But sometimes I will have, especially women, we talk about high achieving women all the time. And I would say this would be a good example. So maybe a woman has had like some subtle emotional neglect, nothing that looks really big and traumatic from the outside, but carries this core belief of I'm too much, I have to shrink. So maybe it was things like you feel things too much, or why are you crying all the time? Things like that. Like don't seem like that big of a deal, but when you pile them up together, then they can cause some problems, especially without like repair or being able to come back and say, you know what, I was mad in that moment. I didn't really mean that. Let's talk it through. So it doesn't always look big and traumatic from the outside. So I'm too much. I have to shrink. And then after some sessions, depending on how deep that goes and how much of her life she's been spending doing that, it might be 5, it might be 50. I don't know. I'm not in control. They can say things like, I feel like I finally came back to myself. I finally feel confident, things like that. And like that kind of breakthrough, when people tell me that they no longer feel this negative core belief, like I love that. That's what makes my work worth it every single time.
That's so powerful. If someone is listening right now and thinking, this might be what I need, what should they do next?
Yeah, great question. So you definitely want somebody trained in EMDR. So you can get a certification. So there's actually 2 levels of training, and I am level 2 trained. So I have the certification and then the level 2 certification. Most of the time, people can't even buy equipment if they're not licensed therapists. So that's the good news. Hopefully nobody's out there doing it all willy-nilly, because you do have to be able to hold people when they come out of it, or you have to be able to do real therapy and be there for people as they're processing some of these memories. So make sure that it feels like a safe, trusted person and environment. There's actually several EMDR related books, like Getting Past Your Past. Francine Shapiro, who's the creator of EMDR, that's a really good one. There's The Body Keeps the Score, which is not solely EMDR focused, but it is a big chapter in there. And I think we've talked about things like this as well, Jen, how the body holds on to trauma. And honestly, if you want to go out and Google and you want to go out and find out information, just remember that there's good and bad reports for every kind of therapy, coaching, whatever out there. So just make sure that your resources are trusted.
Absolutely. And of course, if you guys want to connect with Kristen and talk more about EMDR or anything therapy related, you absolutely should. If you don't know her, you should know her. So we will drop all of her info in the show notes. And so, Kristen, before we close, what else might our listeners need to know about EMDR that we didn't really cover? Like, what else should I have asked you, or what else is out there, if anything?
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, this is one of my passions. So I could probably talk about it for hours and hours. And you can ask me any question and hopefully feel like I'm as close to an expert as one could be. It's something I've been doing for about 12 years and pretty solidly in the last 8 years. But I think that people just need to understand that it really works. I've seen transformations that are amazing. Also, the VA has taken EMDR on as one of their most used methods to work with veterans that have come back from very traumatic situations overseas. And so I think that speaks to the validity and the power of it, that the VA is willing to use it as one of their main sources. So again, I could talk for hours, but I'd need very specific questions.
Well, I love that. That's a great piece of knowledge to know that the VA uses that. And it's also great to know that our servicemen and women are getting that help that they need and have needed for so long. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Kristen, for breaking this down with such grace. If EMDR has been on your radar, or if something inside of you is whispering, this might help, we both really hope that this episode gives you permission to go explore it.
Yes, because healing is possible and you don't have to carry your pain forever. You are allowed to feel free again.
Absolutely. Let us know your biggest takeaway from today. DM us or comment on our latest posts with your thoughts. And until next time, keep choosing healing and keep embracing your value.
See you next time. Thank you for being here with us today.
If today's episode hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because everyone deserves to know their worth.
Next week, we're diving even deeper with more insights and tools to help you break free from limitations and live authentically.
Until then, keep raising your standards, owning your worth, and embracing your value.